Lewis Hamilton's first British Grand Prix as a Ferrari driver was supposed to be a homecoming masterpiece. Silverstone, 150,000 roaring fans, and Hamilton, the master of this circuit, reunited with glory. Instead, as rain swept across the circuit and the surface turned treacherous, Hamilton found himself wrestling a machine that simply wouldn't cooperate. His Ferrari SF25, a car that had shown flashes of brilliance in practice, transformed into what he later called the most difficult car I've ever driven in these conditions. This wasn't hyperbole. The SF25 snapped loose mid-corner, skated unpredictably under throttle, and robbed Hamilton of any confidence to attack the slick tarmac with the precision he's known for. But as much as this result, a fourth-place finish, might sting, the seven-time world champion didn't just walk away frustrated. He walked away determined, and armed with a clear vision for what Ferrari's engineers must fix, not just for the remainder of 2025, but for their entire 2026 challenger. So what exactly does Hamilton want from the SF25? Why does he believe this machine fights him at the very moment he needs it to obey? And what can Ferrari realistically change mid-season? Or will the full transformation have to wait until next year? This is the story of an all-time great driver identifying a car's deepest flaws in real time, and what his evolving relationship with Ferrari's technical team now means for the future of this partnership. At the core of Hamilton's critique is stability, or rather, the lack of it. In the dry, the SF25 has occasionally looked competitive, but as soon as Silverstone's infamous showers hit, the car's most fundamental weakness was exposed: inconsistent mechanical balance, especially at low speeds. Ferrari's engineers have chased grip all season, but Hamilton's feedback cuts deeper. He's demanding a car that responds predictably across changing conditions, a machine that won't surprise him mid-corner. The telemetry from Silverstone revealed what Hamilton felt instinctively: sudden shifts in front-to-rear balance through low-speed corners, where the car's aerodynamic platform becomes unstable as downforce levels drop dramatically. This instability forces Hamilton to hold back, unable to attack apexes aggressively or get on throttle early, essential in wet conditions when the grip window is already razor-thin. The SF25's rear-end unpredictability under load transfer was particularly pronounced exiting slower turns like Village and Vale, where Hamilton repeatedly struggled to lay down power without risking snap oversteer. Ferrari's engineers will need to analyse the interaction between their rear suspension geometry and aero platform compliance, potentially revisiting anti-squat characteristics and the behaviour of the rear axle under varying load scenarios. But beyond mechanical grip, Hamilton's feedback points to an aerodynamic inconsistency as well. The SF25's floor and diffuser performance seems sensitive to ride height variations, compounding the difficulty in wet conditions where surface undulations matter even more. Hamilton's call for a car that turns at low speed isn't a vague complaint. It's a precise technical roadmap that implicates both mechanical setup and aerodynamic consistency. And while some changes can happen mid-season via suspension tweaks and aero refinements, Hamilton's input is clearly being funneled into Ferrari's 2026 project, where fundamental design shifts can address these core weaknesses from the ground up. What makes this chapter in Hamilton's Ferrari story so fascinating is the tension between expectation and reality. When he left Mercedes for Maranello, many assumed his decision was driven by emotion, history, legacy, a romantic dream of emulating Schumacher in red. But Hamilton is also a pragmatist, and his comments after Silverstone reveal a man fully aware that emotion alone won't deliver results. His reference to sitting down with the people designing next year's car is revealing. Hamilton isn't just a driver delivering feedback at debriefs. He's positioning himself as an integral part of Ferrari's technical DNA going forward. This is a delicate moment in his relationship with Ferrari. He's still the new recruit, but with more world championships than anyone on the grid and an intimate understanding of what a front-running car requires, Hamilton's authority within the team is rapidly solidifying. At the same time, there's the pressure of perception. Ferrari fans, known for their passionate loyalty, are already measuring Hamilton not just against Leclerc, but against history itself, against the legends who wore scarlet before him. That pressure intensified after Silverstone. Some Italian media framed his comments as excuses, while others noted his remarkable honesty and willingness to highlight weaknesses publicly. Internally, though, this is where Hamilton thrives. He's been here before, walking into a team that knows it needs to improve, but hasn't yet figured out how. His challenge is not just mastering a difficult car, but reshaping the culture around him to make sure the next Ferrari isn't merely fast, but drivable in every condition. And that human element, Hamilton's ability to elevate an entire team through relentless, precise feedback might prove even more important than any lap he turns in anger this season. From a championship perspective, Silverstone was a sobering weekend for Hamilton and Ferrari. Fourth place earned valuable points, but did little to close the gap to the dominant Red Bull of Verstappen and the increasingly consistent McLaren of Norris. After the British Grand Prix, Hamilton sits 57 points behind the leader, a deficit that is far from insurmountable with nearly half the season remaining. But it requires not just small improvements, but transformational progress from Ferrari's technical team. Crucially, what Silverstone exposed is how much Ferrari's competitiveness varies with conditions. Competitive in the dry, deeply vulnerable in the wet. In a season where unpredictable weather has become a defining characteristic, with wet races or mixed conditions already affecting 6 Grand Prix weekends, this inconsistency becomes a direct threat to Hamilton's championship ambitions. The mathematics are stark. Even if Hamilton finishes ahead of Norris and Verstappen in a handful of dry races, any significant point loss during wet weekends could destroy his title chances. Ferrari's inability to give Hamilton the confidence to push in the wet isn't just a technical issue. It's now a strategic vulnerability that rivals will exploit. As the paddock looks ahead to Spa and Suzuka, circuits where weather often plays a major role, Ferrari must ask whether their current development path can close that gap quickly enough. Hamilton's technical feedback is feeding directly into Ferrari's strategy discussions, because at this stage every point matters, and every compromised race could mean the difference between a title fight and another year of frustration. Ferrari's struggle to produce a well-rounded car for mixed conditions is nothing new. Historically, the Scuderia has built machines that excel on smooth, high-speed circuits with consistent track conditions. Think of the dominance at Monza and Bahrain, but has often struggled when unpredictability enters the equation. Even in Schumacher's era of supremacy, there were moments when Ferrari's design philosophy prioritized outright pace over adaptability. What makes Hamilton's critique especially pointed is that he's bringing lessons from his time at Mercedes, a team that, during its peak years, was defined not just by performance, but by versatility, a car that could win on every type of track and in any conditions. In this context, Hamilton's call for a consistent balance isn't simply about solving one wet race at Silverstone. It's about dragging Ferrari into a design philosophy that matches the demands of the modern F1 calendar, where adaptability is arguably as important as peak performance. Ferrari's technical leadership under Fred Vasseur is now grappling with that challenge. Can they take a traditionally aggressive, aero-focused design team and reorient its thinking around drivability and predictability? Can they learn from Mercedes' past successes without losing the identity that defines Ferrari engineering? If they can, Hamilton may well get the car he needs to fight for the 2026 championship. If they can't, history risks repeating itself, flashes of brilliance that collapse under the weight of inconsistency. Hamilton understands this dynamic better than anyone, and it's why his words after Silverstone carry the weight they do. The next steps for Ferrari will be critical not just for salvaging this season, but for laying the foundation for 2026, when major regulation changes offer another potential reset. Hamilton's immediate focus is on updates due for Spa and Monza, tweaks to rear suspension kinematics, diffuser flow conditioning, and minor aerodynamic updates designed to reduce the SF-25 sensitivity to ride height. But the real work is happening behind closed doors in Maranello's design offices. Hamilton's feedback is already shaping next year's car, a car that will need to work across a wider range of conditions if Ferrari is serious about supporting a championship campaign. What makes this period fascinating is that it's rare for a driver of Hamilton's caliber to embed himself so deeply into a team's technical DNA so early in a relationship. If Ferrari listens, this feedback loop could turn into one of the great development stories of modern Formula One, an all-time great driver dragging a legendary but inconsistent team back to the front, not through rhetoric, but through relentless detail. In the short term, though, Hamilton knows that points lost now might haunt Ferrari later. The immediate challenge is clear: minimise weaknesses during unpredictable weekends, while Ferrari's 2026 project quietly takes shape. And as the grid heads to Spa, a circuit where weather unpredictability is a tradition, all eyes will be on how quickly Ferrari can transform Hamilton's feedback into results. Long-term, Hamilton's demands for the SF-25 and beyond represent more than just a technical wish list. They signal a shift in Ferrari's driver-engineer relationship model. Historically, Ferrari has struggled when balancing internal hierarchy, driver influence, and technical leadership. If Hamilton succeeds in embedding himself into the DNA of Ferrari's future designs, it could mark the beginning of a new era for the Scuderia, one where the driver is no longer just a feedback source, but a co-architect of performance philosophy. This dynamic has echoes of Schumacher's era, where Michael, alongside Ross Brawn and Rory Byrne, didn't just drive the cars but fundamentally shaped the team's operational mindset. For Hamilton, this may be the legacy he seeks, not just wins, but a Ferrari reborn around modern design principles that prioritise consistency, adaptability and confidence-inspiring balance. And this matters for the sport itself. Formula One thrives on these moments of transformation, when a great driver and an iconic team come together to rewrite their destinies. Whether Hamilton can pull Ferrari into this future remains uncertain, but the seeds are being planted now. Silverstone's disappointment wasn't the end of the story. It might be remembered as the turning point where Hamilton's Ferrari project truly began, not just as a racing chapter, but as a cultural and technical reformation within one of the sport's most storied institutions.